So the Astrology of Family Karma and Relationships podcast, Mars, Saturn, and the Ties That Bind, Family Themes of Empowerment is the title of today's program. That's our idea with special guest Laura Sklover, folks. So this interesting topic of Mars and Saturn, that was something that we found when we were doing our research that in general astrology, Laura, isn't it true that Mars is considered the god of war and deals with Mars
Yes, it
cycles
is.
in general? Yeah,
It definitely does. Yeah.
yeah. So Mars being anger or war, courage, competition, passion. Saturn being structure, law, restriction, discipline, responsibility, obligation. These would be things that astrologers would look for in most astrological charts to describe military, paramilitary types of endeavors. There was one other thing that astrologers typically look at, and we discussed the next planet, Pluto.
Pluto. Yeah.
That Pluto, the most distant planet, the one that was demoted by astronomers, Pluto, the god of the underworld, Pluto named by an 11-year-old girl, not by astronomers. It was a drawing, a lottery to name the planet X back then. And Pluto is the god of the underworld. Death and rebirth are Plutonian themes, themes that deal with power themes, death and rebirth themes, and also, lastly, uh, people might know Pluto was discovered in 1930. Plutonium was discovered in 1935. And of course, during the 30s into the 40s, the rise and the beginning of Nazism, the rise of World War II, and then eventually World War II. Certainly a plutonium theme, if ever there was, like Hiroshima, Nagasaki,
Yeah.
the atom bomb, the atomic bomb, plutonium themes. So those themes of Pluto are really powerful, as are Mars, as are Saturn. In astrological parlance, those three planets are really big when it comes to looking at militaristic kind of efforts.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to look at those charts of that family in a second. But you know, it occurred to me, I kind of threw this at you, Laura, just a couple of hours ago. I was wondering what other family system might have some military background or leadership, military, world leader. What family could I think of since we're discussing families and the theme of Saturn and Mars tying families together? What family could I think of that would maybe show something of interest? And of course, I thought of the Kennedy family and sort of the American Camelot as they discuss it, the Kennedy
Right.
family. So Joseph Kennedy Sr., born September 6th of 1888. I have a data of 7:06 in the morning, Boston, Massachusetts, for those of you who don't have the chart. But very important, Joseph Kennedy Sr. has this Mars and Pluto opposition in the chart,
Right.
and kind of you know midpoint to that opposition, kind of wide, uh, is that Saturn again. So Saturn is prominent in Joseph's chart. It's near that career angle of the chart. It's sort of in the upper quadrant of the chart, as is that Pluto. So
Do
again,
we know, is that time accurate? Just
uh,
curious about it.
yeah, this was
Yeah.
Rodden's data. It gets a dirty data. It's questionable as to whether he's a morning baby, but 7:06 is pretty exacting. I'm not sure who came up with that time.
Yeah.
But we do still have a Mars Pluto opposing each other that's
Right.
significantly
Yeah.
notable there. JFK's chart has Saturn at the top of the chart with Pluto not far and Mars on the other side of the sun. So Saturn prominent, Pluto prominent, Neptune prominent in JFK's chart, and then that Mars part of this grouping or stellium. Notable, JFK's chart, Laura, was one of those charts that's always noted particularly for a fan pattern. This idea of the
Yeah.
body of the fan and the handle being Uranus. He was a Uranian rule breaker. He was wanting
That's for sure. Yeah.
wanting to change government, wanting to get rid of the Fed. That caused a lot of stir. He was a reformer, as was Bobby. We know what happened to JFK and to his brother Bobby.
Right. Yes. Unfortunately.
Yeah, notable too for for these charts. Although this is one of those principles of Alexander's that most astrologers don't agree with, is that I look at that Mars to Sun relationship, and folks, I look at this stellium grouping as a giant amalgamation, and I think of that Mars as being conjoined to that Sun. I would expect this person, JFK, to have a martial element to his nature, independent, aggressive, assertive, and/or military. Now, here we have roughly almost a semi-sextile, like let's say about a good solid 24 degrees, 25, 23 degrees, something in there, separation of that Mars and that Sun. I think that that's an interesting component because in the charts we're looking at today, that semi-sextile or 22 degrees roughly separation of Mars and Sun seem to be pretty consistent in these charts. But that's not a conjunction by most astrologer standards, right?
No, it isn't, which you're going to get a lot of blowback on that, but that's
I
okay.
I do.
We should talk about that. Yeah.
I go ahead. We could talk. But let's just look at a few charts for my
Yeah.
point about it. But again, we were saying astrology would say that if these folks were military and/or leaders and/or powerful people or power brokers, we would see Mars, Saturn, Pluto prominent. JFK's chart has at least two of those planets that are prominent. But actually, too, that Sun is kind of midpointish with that Pluto and that Mars. That for me as an astrologer stands out. Most astrologers wouldn't quite see it that way, but I still see that Sun and that Pluto and that Mars and that Saturn being prominent in this chart. For Bobby Kennedy, November 20th of 25 for Bobby Kennedy, we have Sun Saturn conjunction, and we have Mars very close to the chart as well. So we have that Mars and that Saturn, both on either side of the descendant, and that Sun nearby. So again, Sun, Mars, Saturn. The one planet that's not like obviously in our face is Pluto, though Pluto is trine. So again, a Pluto aspect to this chart. Saturn, Mars, and Pluto trine to one another. Another interesting
Hmm.
connection of Pluto and Mars and Saturn. And again, that Mars for Bobby Kennedy is roughly almost 5 degrees. We'll say 4 degrees, 50 minutes. That Sun is 28 degrees of Scorpio, and those are roughly 24 degrees apart. So there again, in that ballpark of that sort of semi-sextile, less than semi-sextile relationship. Again, I personally would look at that bond of Sun 28, Saturn 18, Mars 4 degrees Scorpio in Bobby Kennedy's chart, setting there on that descendant. I would look at that as a stellium and also a conjunction, an amalgamation of Mars, Saturn, and Sun energy for Bobby. And Bobby also was a reformer, as we know. I mean, Bobby was
Yeah,
definitely
that's true.
assassinated for his carrying on the work of his brothers. Ted Kennedy, February 22nd of 32. Here we do have a Mars Mercury Sun conjunction. There
Hmm.
is a Saturn opposing Pluto in the chart. Pluto's setting, Saturn is rising in Ted's chart. Again, structure and Pluto, hidden or difficult themes. And then, Mars Sun, a person who's executive. In this case, Pluto Mercury, he was mercurial, mental mercurial. So I mean, I read that, for instance, as an example of that Mercury Mars Sun conjunction as somebody who might be like lawyerly or have a very strong mentality.
Well, and he did come across that way. I
Hmm.
mean, he definitely projected himself in that way,
He
you
was a
know,
senator for many
a
decades,
very vocal senator.
very prominent, very
Yeah,
vocal,
yeah.
a, a key
And
leader of
one who also was able to cross the aisle. So, yeah.
another person who could kind of cross the aisle. He did
Uh,
command respect.
I'm gonna have to just hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, I have the cats are fighting with each other.
Ah, I didn't. I thought I heard something in the background, but wow,
Yeah.
it's interesting, because something else that brought us to do this workshop today, this presentation rather, was we were discussing this military theme and how right now in the sky we have that Saturn Pluto opposition here. We're doing this recording in
That's
spring
right.
of 2025, in early May of 2025, where we just had a retrograde Mars opposing that Pluto, retrograde Mars and Leo opposing Pluto in the sky these last half year. When Donald Trump was elected, when Donald Trump took office in January and was inaugurated, we worried, all of us, that we might have another January 6th event. But now we're kind of worrying as Trump and the GOP are dismantling what they feel needs to happen, dismantling the government and dismantling governmental agencies left and right. And also, we're having themes of dictatorship and Vladimir Putin and Ukraine. These are all big themes. What's
That's
happening in
true.
the Gaza Strip. Again, Mars, Pluto. Mars, they say, the lower octave of Pluto, Pluto being
Right.
plutonium, Mars being war. So we're having that opposition right now, and it kind of spawned. It's a martial time we're in. And as we're discussing this, the cats are fighting. That's good, interesting coincidence. But we'll have to bring them in. They decided to join the show. What do you know? Next, the dogs will show up outside. So we'll see what happens next. But Ted Kennedy, let's not forget, not only was he famous for being a senator for forever and being a person, as you say, reached across the aisle, he was also famous for Chappaquiddick, for the drowning of his secretary or
Yeah,
possible lover. And there was
right.
something else that
Some sort of involvement, which we don't know for sure what happened
we
there.
don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
the secretary who drowned. But we do know that when this calamity happened at night and the car slid into the water, the person that Ted called was his mistress, not his wife. So that added to the whole, the mistress gets the phone call and there's a woman in the car, and he manages to get out of the car and escape drowning himself. Interesting, we look at a chart sometimes karmically, right? When we see a Neptune and Moon conjunction, Neptune
Yeah.
and Moon in the eighth house of death. Some astrologers call the eighth house the house of death or demise. So we have that Neptune Moon conjunction opposing Ted's chart. And well, there was certainly a major death in his life that involved drowning. So
Yeah.
that's interesting how the birth
Yeah.
chart, they say, promises themes in a person's life or sometimes literal events in a person's life.
That's just amazing. And again, we know that that's right, the time,
Oh yeah,
or
the
did they
time
make it right so that it would work?
no, the data is double
No.
A data. That's
Okay,
it.
good.
Yep, we have February 22nd of 32, 3:58 in the morning in Dorchester for Ted Kennedy. So
Wow.
yeah,
I mean,
that's a
that
right on
really,
chart.
yeah,
That's an
speaks
accurate
volumes
chart.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that we digress if we discuss the drowning of event of Chappaquiddick and look at the cycles around that. That's not really apropos of our discussion, other than the themes of Saturn and Pluto and Mars, which are about military or militarism or paramilitary or control or even like military, war, death and dying. So it brings in another theme in his life that was certainly Plutonian, death and dying, this drowning event. So let's go to the family in question that we had talked about in our prep. We have a grandfather who was born in August 4th of 26, when we have no time of birth. But this grandfather has a sun in Leo at 11 degrees and Mars at 1 degree Taurus. So kind of a
Hmm.
bit of a wide square off by 10 degrees, 11 degrees there. But, 10 degrees, but some call it a square. I would certainly call it a square.
Well, I mean, it is the sun, right? And that's so you can give it a wider orb anyway. Yeah.
But there
So
also
it
is
works. It works. Yeah.
there also is a Saturn opposite that Mars and
Yes.
square that Sun. So we have a T
Hmm.
square in the grandfather's chart, Saturn in Taurus, Scorpio and pardon me, Saturn and Scorpio, Mars and Taurus, and the Sun in between. So we have a T square, the Sun in Leo. So there's a T square. If we involve the Jupiter, he actually has got a grand cross in fixed signs. Grand cross and fixed signs in grandfather's chart. That's
Hmm.
grandfather on the father's side of the sons in question who are all military, right? That's the father's father.
Right. Right.
So they say in astrology, don't they say that family patterns typically have similar astrological signatures to them?
Yes,
Like,
and you'll notice that the ones with the same names, I mean the same names. The oldest son, um, it's interesting because they are all the oldest in their family. Son number one, the father, and then the grandfather. And they all, interestingly, when ended up going into the military and in the army.
so
All
the
of them ended up in the army sect. And the other thing that is interesting that the mother had pointed out to me is that they all ended up in Okinawa,
so the
many
grand
years apart from each other.
good Lord.
Yeah.
So the grandfather, who has a Grand Cross and fixed a Mars opposing Saturn, the grandfather was in Okinawa in World War
Hmm.
II.
Hmm.
His son, the father of the three youngsters or younger gentlemen we'll be discussing, the father himself, July 19th of 1947, 7:30 a.m. Brooklyn, New York. That's the father of the three sons we'll talk about. He also is in the army and
Yep.
also stationed in Okinawa. Right.
Also stationed in Okinawa. And I just want to say also that
Hmm.
the grandfather was drafted. There was a draft. The father, like his sons, went into the military. He went in as a young man, as a very young man. I think he was like 16 or 17. Actually earned his degree. His his he earned his GED or whatever in while he was in there, but then went on to you know get multiple degrees after that, going on to university. But to made a conscious decision to do that, which was really something back in that time period.
That is, and I'm noting, by the way, I hope I'm not interrupting, forgive me, but I'm noting that the grandfather has a Leo bundle here, and his
Yeah.
son, both of them now we know that it wound up in Okinawa in the army.
Yep.
His son has a Leo rising with a big Leo bundle as well. So
Yes.
the grandfather's solar placement is in Leo on his son's Saturn and Pluto. Again, the theme of Pluto and Saturn being militaristic here is part of our question, part of our exploration of today's program. So the father who bore a son, born in 1947, the son, his dad had the natal sun on his child's ascendant in Saturn and Pluto and Moon. Interesting. And also, uh, in this case, his son, a 25 Cancer, 57 sun placement in his birth chart next to Mercury there, that was only 5 days away, 6 days away from being also a Leo sun sign. So you have a Cancer Leo bundle for the father. And then when we go to the children, we have for the
We'll go to
first
son
two.
number one. He also has his Mars in Leo, and he's got that sad. Yeah, he's got that Cancer
That and,
stellium there
and
as well, just like the father. Hmm.
right, another stellium that involves Saturn and Sun and Mars configurations. So this is the first son, the eldest son, who entered the military, got his degree or GED, you said?
No, the the
Oh, the
father of
father,
all
forgive me,
this.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. The father got
yeah.
the GED. So explain to me this eldest son of the father. So again, the father was 1947,
Hmm.
July 19th. His eldest son, July
July
2nd of
2nd,
74.
1974. Hmm. He actually, my understanding is he actually had gone into the military, I believe at age 30. I guess that bears out, right? Because it was 2004, and I'm pretty sure it was age 30 that I was told.
Uh-huh.
He had gone in as an officer because he had multiple degrees. So because of his degrees, he ended up going in as an officer,
Uh-huh.
and went on to become a major. So he ended up, being career military and extending his career longer than he would have normally. Like I said, it ended up being 20 years, which it wasn't supposed to. It wasn't slated for that, and it just ended up that just like his two other brothers, He was in the same year, 2004, out the same year, 2024. So strange.
That's a very
You
unusual.
can't make this up.
Right,
It,
right.
yeah.
So this younger man, the son number one, was a major in the military,
Hmm.
entered 2004, exited 20 years later, 2024.
Correct.
And he has a sun at the sun placement next to Saturn. So Saturn is
Sun, Saturn,
prominent.
very strong. Saturn is the ruler of his chart because he's got Capricorn rising. Sorry to talk over you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So Cap rising, Sun Saturn conjunction,
Hmm.
Pluto square that Sun Saturn conjunction, and again that Mars at 14 Leo, Sun at 10 degrees of the sign of Cancer. That's separated by 34 degrees. So there we go. We have a semi-sextile of Sun and Mars in the
Mm.
majors chart. Now his brothers,
Wait, I just want to point something else. Oh, I'm so sorry.
please go ahead.
I wanted to just say that the ruler of his midheaven career is happens to be Scorpio, which is traditional ruler Mars, and current if unless you know happen to be a well, you and I will say it's Pluto, right? So we're
Right,
going to say
modern
it's
ruler,
both.
modern
Yeah,
ruler.
and that boy doesn't that flush out.
Yeah, so the ruler of his career angle, in other words, astrology,
Yeah,
in Astrology 101, like a basic tenet of
yeah.
astrology is the ascendant governs the person's personality and sense of selfhood,
Hmm.
ruled by Saturn here at Capricorn rising, conjunct the sun, discipline, and the career ruler, Scorpio, at the top of the career chart there, at the top of the career angle, ruled by Pluto and Mars, respectively. That Pluto significant high up in the sky there with Uranus. Again, that Pluto square the Saturn, square the Mercury, square the
Square the
Sun.
sun. Yeah.
So again,
Eh,
you want Saturn, you'd say structured Pluto, structured force, structured
yeah.
structured power themes.
Yep.
Now, I doing what I do as a backyard astronomer, a very avid astronomer and an astrologer, I do really weird things that astrologers never approve of. Like I look at that Mars at 34 degrees away from the sun, and I think, oh wow, that Mars is conjunct the sun. I look at that Mars as being aligned to the sun. Granted, I don't see it conjunct like I do Saturn and Mercury, but I see there being a Mars Sun alignment, nearly a semi-sextile, and I think, huh, that's interesting. I look at the brother of this eldest son, so son number two, and here again we have Mars and Sun, in this case separated by 31, 32 degrees. So again, a semi-sextile. That's kind of interesting coincidence.
Right.
So
Yeah.
take it away, Laura. What would you say about this chart that was stood out when you thought about
Well,
it?
when I look at the chart, I don't look at that semi-sextile, but you had pointed that out, and I do find that interesting. What jumps off the page to me is that this person has Pluto on the ascendant. He has his Mars and his Mercury in conjunction with each other in Capricorn, which is Saturn ruled, right?
Hmm.
And then he has where's his Saturn again? I'm
Opposite at the
sorry.
top of at the midhaven of the chart.
Right. It's right in there in his 10th house. And so I see that. And again, so we're seeing that theme play out again in relationship to each other.
So that the Saturn, the Mars, and the Pluto all significant in this chart,
Right.
and powerful placements in the chart. And then also too, I'm looking at that semi-sextile of Mars to Sun. Now,
Hmm.
this Sun number two, again, just like Sun number one entered the military, became a major in 2004. Sun number two entered the police force, entered training, right?
Right.
2004.
Went into the academy in 2004.
And then,
No, I think maybe I
and his,
think his first day of I'm sorry, his first day on the job was in 2004. But I believe that would mean that he went into the academy
I
in that
see.
year as well because let me just see, July 1st, 2004, it was the first um, day on the job. Hmm.
So 2000 so July 1st, 2004 for son number 2 entered the first day on the job as a police officer. His
Hmm.
brother son number three
July
entered
1st, 2004 as well.
July
But they,
July of 2004 as well. Both, and they were both in the academy together and in training together.
yep.
Yeah, and they both exited the same year, 2024.
Yeah, they exited a month apart. One stayed in a little bit longer than the other.
Again,
A
the
month and
important thing, folks, as we go
yeah,
through these charts, the eldest son, the major in the army, had a number of longer tours, entered the military as an officer, 2004, left 2024. The second son,
correct.
born February 7th, 1977, 9:34 p.m., Mineola, New York. The second son began his first day in the job in July of 2004, exited summer or thereabouts 2024. The third son, who was in the academy with the second son, the third son was born May 24th, 1979, almost 8 p.m., 7:40 p.m., again in New York, in Mineola, New York. That third son has Saturn at the top of the chart, conjoined the midheaven
With the North Node.
with the North Node.
Hmm. And oh, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go ahead.
Not at all.
No, I mean, but we also, Scorpio is the ruler of his chart, right? So that means that
Scorpio's
Mars and
ascendant.
Pluto come in. Yeah. And we can see that he's got that Venus and Mars conjunction in Taurus in a perfect trine there to his Saturn
Hmm.
and to his midheaven. And then Pluto is also elevated. It's over there in the 10th, 11th house, sitting right there on the cusp there. So it's definitely that theme keeps coming up.
Right, of the top of the chart,
Yeah.
Saturn and Pluto, these two elevated planets. And Pluto, by the way, astronomically speaking, since it has a very elliptical orbit like comets, Pluto's oftentimes, really quite high off the ecliptic. So I would be unsurprised if astronomically, if Pluto may be very high in the sky, oftentimes it's higher than a astrology chart shows. But in any case, Pluto is prominent, rules the ascendant. Saturn is prominent, conjoined the North Node in Midheaven. Mars is prominent in that it's conjoined Venus exactly. So, and this was again another police officer who went to academy roughly 2004, exited.
No, it's not roughly 2000, but yeah, okay. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and exited the same year 2024 as the other two brothers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, that
It's
is
just
really
amazing. It's just really kind of interesting. The other thing that was interesting about this is, although the father to these children, as well as the grandfather, were in the military, um, career-wise, they didn't actually do any. They didn't weren't military career or law enforcement. So it's interesting that these three brothers ended up doing that, which, to my understanding from the mother, it was not the original intention. Hence, the older brother had all that schooling behind him. He had a master's by the time he went in. Um,
wow.
the two other brothers had bachelor degrees. Like one of them was thinking about being an architect. The other one was thinking about being a doctor, and had a friend whose father was in the police. Was pretty high up there in Manhattan, and the friend was going in, and well, you know what? Let's throw our hat in this too, and see, and how they do, and what happened was they were called for it, and they just decided to run with that, which was so weird because they
Very
weren't gonna do that. The mom thought that that was really kind of strange that they all ended up doing that, and that her reading came true.
all three sons were in uniform. So I'm
Hmm.
curious, as I know our time is a little limited today, but which son was going to considering being an architect, and which one was considering being a medical practitioner?
Oh, okay. So the middle son, the one who was born in 77, he was considering being an architect.
With
And
with Saturn opposite his sun at the top and up there in the career angle.
mhm. And you look at, he's got Libra rising, moon on the ascendant, right? Um, And then the other one was the youngest one. He was the one who was thinking about being a
Position or
well, he was actually thinking about being a surgeon, but then found out that his hands were too big. But if
ah,
and he did work in a hospital for a while.
uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah,
but if you see, you can see that he's got Venus and Mars in that, straddling that sixth house.
that sixth house of health
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
medical practice, and his sun is just above the horizon there, just about getting ready to set at his time of birth. Again, the last sun we're talking about, May 24th of 79, roughly 8 p.m. in New York. That
Well,
sun getting
these
ready to
times
set.
are exact.
Oh yeah, no, I'm saying for the
Yeah.
audience who's
Yeah.
listening versus seeing
Mm-hmm.
or watching on
And he's
YouTube.
got that Mercury and the moon in there too. And what we're not showing, just because it becomes visually just kind of dizzying to look at, is that he actually has his Juno, he has Chiron in there as well, all in Taurus.
Wow. So
Yeah.
Juno and Chiron in here too. Chiron the healer is in that sixth house bundle.
In that sixth house, right at 10 degrees. Hmm.
Interesting.
In the sixth house. So just wanted to point that out. Um, Thought that was pretty interesting.
I often find not only in that sixth sector that we know in the traditional astrology the second, 12th house and the sixth house are known to be the houses of health and health providers. Commonly, too, having the sun on the descendant where you're working with others, let's say one patient after another, it's very common for those who work individually. You know, doctors one-on-one, acupuncturists one-on-one, astrologers more typically one-on-one. So to have this gentleman's sun placement in the seventh, right on that angle, also not infrequent to find with medical practitioners. Also, Jupiter also has some governance astrologically regarding medical practice there in the ninth house. Here's another thing that I do with astrology, most astrologers don't. I look at the top of the chart as the outer world, aka the career. So I would look at the Pluto and I would look at the Saturn and I would look at the Jupiter, all at the top of the chart. Jupiter on the cusp of the ninth, Saturn right on the cusp of the 10th, and Pluto on the cusp of the 11th. And I would wonder if all three of these planets might figure in this person's outer world personality. But there's the Jupiter, the idea of like being a healer. Interesting for sun number three. So uh, all three suns enter
My three
the
sons,
my
not
three
my
sons,
three sons,
my
not
three
my three
sons.
sons, but
Yeah, not yours. Yeah, you'd be quite a bit older than you are. My three sons. It's right, like a TV show. The oldest son, 1974, July 2nd, enters the military with advanced degrees and a master's degree. Becomes a major in the military. Stays for 20 years. He enters 2004, leaves military 2024. The second brother, the second son, enters the police force summertime 2004, leaves the police force 2024. The third son enters the police force 2004, exits the police force 2024. All three of these youngsters, as you said, the mother had been told by a psychic that her three sons will be in uniform, that she'll have three babies and she'll have three boys and they'll
yeah,
all be in uniform. Is that what?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Life is strange.
And
Can't make
so
this up.
you can't make this up. It happened. It's
So do you have any do you have any as we kind of going to close shortly today? Do you have any thoughts or kind of some summary here for the audience, the listeners and the viewers when you had these clients and when you kind of helped them understand or maybe you thought about understanding where they were with this Mars Pluto Saturn thing?
well, I initially I didn't really realize for sure what the connection was, but I knew it was something that we needed to look into. And so that would, you start saying, okay, what are the patterns here that are repeating themselves, and what is typical, and that's where you really come in, because that's like, I know astrology. I've been, dabbling in astrology since, late 80s, but I'm not an astrologer. a professional astrologer, so it's really
Although
you. Yeah.
you do practice, right? So we're going to look at we're going to put out there in a little moment a little way people can contact you for the work you offer and your website and so forth. But astrology and you have been together for quite a long time.
Yeah.
You've been doing and studying for a very long time yourself,
A very long time. Yeah, yeah.
decades.
I was bitten by the astrology bug officially in 1994, where I really kind of like went into it. But I never, went off and did other things, as they say.
Yeah,
Um, so one of the things before we close, because we are kind of pressed for time, but I wanted to have you on my podcast,
that's
and
very sweet. Thank you.
yes, and I really want to talk about those white orbs and why you why why you work with those, and where you see the proof in the pudding, as they say, and how you come about that. And I know that part of that is because you are an astronomer, and that's really part of, what makes you really kind of unique. Because I would say that I would say most astrologers are not astronomers also, and they don't even know how to marry the two together. So I really would love to talk about that with you, and
Well,
kind of
thank
delve
you.
into that, because I do think you have a very unique way of looking at things, and you've been working almost 50 years, which is crazy when I look at you, because how could that be?
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get that together at some point in
Well, thank
time
you.
in the near future.
We'll do that, and we'll dig into it a bit. But since you bring it up, I'll just say in brief. Yeah, next June, I think it's next June, will be my 50th year of professional practice as an astrologer, working with clients. And
Wow.
in those 5 decades, what I have seen over time, it's for me, it's a little bit in brief. We all learned the foundations of astrology that have come to be, foundational constructs, foundational teachings for good reasons because those constructs work. But we there are always little perturbances and odd things, oddities, like the three young men in today's broadcast. They each were in both the military and paramilitary forces. Two brothers trained together as cadets and as police officers. One was a major in the army. They all have a Mars within roughly 30 degrees of their sun. Now, in astrology, generally speaking, a semi-sextile we think of having not really any particular energetic, but there has been a lot of discussion over the decades of 22 degrees. The 22-degree mark astrologically is being a significant degree of empowerment. So here I'm not really, I guess I should be not surprised after all these years. I keep seeing Mars when it's about semi-sextile, roughly 30 degrees or less from the sun. While it's not traditionally a conjunction, not close enough, I keep seeing the same thing over and over again. People who are martial, people who are direct, people who are athletic, people who marry or are drawn to romantic sexual partners who are athletic and powerful and are martial artists and military, firemen. I see it again and again and again.
The other thing I was just remembering that the mother told me was they were all in I'll say karate. It might have been something different, but all together.
In martial
And
arts,
that, yes,
all
and
together?
the oldest one, when he actually, when they do the karate, they have matches against each other, and
Tournaments,
then
yeah.
whoever tournaments, he I guess annihilated the first couple of boys that he went against, and that the third boy he went against was going against started to cry because he was afraid to go against the soul. That was how intense the energy was, and how it's just he leveled the other two that
Well,
came before him. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not talking about his brothers. I'm talking about whoever he was matched
and
up
by the
against.
way,
Yeah.
the if we go a little bit, no, there's other days we'll talk about it, but there was a whole study regarding astrology and its validity called the Gauquelin Report, and it spawned a book called the Mars Effect. When Mars is prominent in a chart, usually and particularly at one of the angles, the main angles of a chart. When Mars is one of those main angles of a chart, those four main angles of a chart, Mars rising, setting, culminating, is supposed to be the indicator of a powerful athletic person, as is a Mars conjunction, an athlete. So, so in closure here, let's make sure that we bring up some slides where people could find out where to connect with you. And dear Laura,
Yeah, so it's at pickinguptheconversation.com.
so, so indeed, yes, thank you, Laura, for sharing with me once again your wonderful, brilliant astrological thoughts and this incredible journey with the family of these Mars, Saturn, Pluto people. Also, too, I want to make sure that I ask our audience that you do subscribe. Please do go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to my podcast there, as well as to other areas like Spotify to subscribe as well. The more the subscriptions I have, the more the algorithms will find me. So I thank you for those efforts to subscribe and follow. Thank you so much. And of course, those who want to have a private session with me, please do go to my website at astrologyspirit.com. Thanks everyone for watching and for listening, and we'll see you again shortly.